That was 180 gallons of wine. 6 jars, 20 to 30 gallons. They could drink, huh? They could drink. Today's gospel reading is taken from, as you know, the Gospel of John. Now, even those who are just lightly familiar with the Gospels, you know that the Gospel of John is very different from the Gospels of Mark, Matthew, and Luke. They're called the Synoptic Gospels together. But the Gospel of John is different. And it strikes us because John does not have an infancy narrative like Matthew and Luke do. They are the ones who tell us about the Annunciation, about how Jesus was born, and all the good stories. But that does not mean that John is not interested in the origins of Jesus. For example, Matthew is really interested. He gives you the genealogy. John does not have a genealogy. Rather, instead of being interested with the earthly beginning of Jesus, John begins his story with the eternal existence of Jesus. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. And maybe Luke and Matthew could continue the story from here because they haven't told you anything about Jesus from where he came. And John's Christmas is described in very simple words. The Word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. That's John's Christmas. Since John does not have an infancy narrative, neither does he have the traditional story of the Epiphany with the Magi, or the 3 kings as we call them. Remember my homily about Epiphany? We don't know whether there were 3 or 13 or 30 that came, but that story does not exist in John either. So the miracle at Cana becomes very important because this story is the Epiphany in John's story. I want you to see how the story ends. John says, Jesus did this at the beginning of his signs at Cana in Galilee, and so revealed his glory. What is the Epiphany? The Epiphany is the revelation of Jesus to the world. So his disciples began to believe in him. So what shall we make of John's story? Listen, there are many perspectives from which you can approach this gospel, but I'm choosing to focus on the characters in the story to find inspiration. So I want to talk about Mary. I want to talk about the servants. And then there are the disciples. So let's first deal with the mother of Jesus. I'm calling her the mother of Jesus and not Mary because in John's gospel, Mary is not named. She's called the mother of Jesus or the woman. But it was the mother of Jesus that initiated this miracle. However, she's rebuked by Jesus. Woman, how does your concern affect me? And we Catholics have a hard time trying to understand that Jesus would say that to his mother, particularly because we have great regard for Mary. And we can explain it away, we can soften this rebuke, but it is nothing short of a rebuke. And that's important. It's Mary's reaction in the face of the rebuke that is the real message of the story. With unconditional trust in his son, she tells the servants, do whatever he tells you. Now, Mary's response is John's way of showing his readers, this is important, this is crucial, don't forget this. Mary's response is John's way of showing his readers the correct response in God's presence. As an aside, let me say that this is also the case in the Gospels of Matthew and Luke, although it is said differently by Mary. In Luke, especially, Mary says, "May it be done to me according to your word." Mary is saying something similar at Cana. By saying to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you," Mary is saying that the correct response to the presence of Jesus is total trust in him. And then there are the servers. The servers too show extraordinary trust and obedience. They listened to Mary, first of all, and they were ready to follow Jesus' instructions. Jesus tells them to fill the jars with water, and the servers fill them up to the brim. Jesus asked them to draw from the jars and take it to the steward of the wedding feast. Again, the servers did whatever he told them. Jesus' command is followed to perfection. No questions asked, no arguments, no saying you're crazy, none of that stuff. They just fulfilled Jesus' command to perfection. Neither the head waiter nor the bridegroom had a clue where this excellent wine came from, but the servers did. So the miracle is the result of servants following to perfection the words of Mary and then the words of Jesus. Once again, John is telling us, this is important, John is telling the readers the correct response to God's presence. And then you have the disciples. The disciples do not play a part in the miracle. We don't know how much wine they drank out of the 180 gallons, but otherwise they have no role to play in this miracle. They're observers, yet their role is crucial. The words with which the miracle ends tells us the real purpose of the story. Jesus did this at the beginning of his signs at Cana in Galilee, and so revealed his glory, and his disciples began to believe in him. Now, on one level, the miracle helped out a newly married couple that were in trouble. However, the couple, they're only external to the story. It's really about the disciples. The miracle should have taught them something. What is it that the disciples should have learned? They should have learned to have confidence and unconditional trust in him like his mother did. They should learn that the correct response in the presence of Jesus is to do whatever he tells you. They should learn that unquestioned obedience to Jesus will be crucial to their discipleship. They should learn that Jesus' command is to be followed to perfection, and if they do so, a hopeless world can be redeemed just as that wedding was saved from embarrassment. Listen, but the gospel is also written for us. And this is where the rubber is going to hit the road. John is showing us the correct response to the life, the ministry, and the message of Jesus. Now listen, the disciples, they were just beginning their ministry with Jesus. They had no idea what was going to happen. But we are in a much more privileged position because we have read his words, we know his life, we know what his message was, we know how it started and how it all ended. So we are in a much better position than the disciples. So John is showing us the correct response to the life, the ministry, and the message of Jesus. For example, Jesus asks us to love even our enemies. Do whatever he tells you. Jesus asks us to be poor in spirit, be meek, be merciful, be peacemakers. be clean of heart, to hunger and thirst for righteousness. And we are to do whatever he tells us. Now you see how hard it is? We can easily sing a song, do whatever he tells you. Or look at this very cute story of how Jesus helped out a couple, but that is not the point of the story. When it comes to the life, the message, and the ministry of Jesus, we are being told, do whatever he tells you. If we do whatever Jesus tells us, then every person will be treated with dignity. Every war can end. No person will ever be hungry. And our earth will be like heaven. John is showing and teaching that if humanity does whatever he tells us, the end result is salvation. It's a very powerful passage. So here we are at this Eucharist. And at every Eucharist, it's not just water that becomes wine. That would make church budgeting very easy. But here, bread and wine are transformed into the body and blood of Christ. Every Eucharist is a moment in Cana, but even better. As we receive Christ into our hearts today, into our hands today, may we trust Jesus like Mary did. May we have the confidence. May we have the obedience that the servants had, but most of all, as we receive Jesus, may we do whatever he tells us. People of God said,